Hi, my name's Dana Whitaker. I'm 42, and for most of my adult life, I've lived quietly in a three-bedroom home just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. The house belongs to my husband, Mark. He's a financial consultant, always buttoned up and reasonable, the kind of man who makes lists even for weekends. We've been married 10 years now, no kids of our own, but Mark has a son from his first marriage, Caleb. He's 23 and just graduated from art school in Chicago. Caleb moved back in a few months ago while figuring out his next steps. He's quiet, polite, and keeps to himself. His studio takes up the entire attic floor, his creative zone, as he calls it. The place always smells faintly of turpentine and cedar, and I don't go up there. That's always been the unspoken rule. When I was younger, I dreamed of being a model. There was even a time I was close. Headshots, castings, a little buzz. But when I met Mark, he made it clear. He didn't see a future in that. He said we didn't need the money and preferred I focus on something realistic. His decision became mine. I let the dream go. So you can imagine my surprise when one Saturday morning, as I was cleaning upstairs, I accidentally pushed Caleb's door open. I didn't mean to. It was slightly ajar, and as I passed, a strange image caught my eye. A canvas turned just enough that I could see what was on it. And what I saw stopped me cold. It was me, not just any painting. It was a portrait, deep, rich, textured. A woman mid-laughter, shoulders slightly turned, lips parted in something between a smile and a secret. The angle, the shadowing, the warmth in the eyes. Mine, but different, stronger, almost breathtaking. Next to it, pinned to the wall, was a printed photo, one I recognized instantly. It was a selfie I posted on Instagram 5 years ago. Nothing special. Just me, outdoors, sun on my face. But he had taken it, printed it, and brought it to life in oil and brush strokes. I should have felt something else. Fear, maybe. Or at least discomfort. But I didn't. My heart was pounding, but not from panic. It was something deeper. Something I hadn't felt in years. I stepped back from the doorway, gently pulling it shut, but the image of that painting followed me down the stairs. I couldn't unsee it. Not just because it was a portrait of me, but because Caleb had seen something in me I no longer saw in myself. That night at dinner, Caleb acted as he always did. Polite, soft-spoken. Mark talked about market trends and insurance rates, and I nodded along. But my mind was miles away, still up there in that attic, staring into a version of myself I didn't recognize, but wanted to. The next few days, I tried to shake it. I failed. Then something strange happened. Late one afternoon, I was folding laundry when I heard voices upstairs, Caleb and a young woman, angry, sharp. Then a door slammed. Moments later, a girl stormed down the stairs, her mascara smudged and her voice shaking with tears. She didn't even look at me. I stood frozen. My pulse jumped, and despite everything in me screaming to stay out of it, I found myself climbing those stairs again, slowly, one step at a time. Caleb? He didn't answer right away. Then, a soft voice. Come in. The door creaked open. He stood near the easel, his back to me, shoulders tense. A new canvas stood half-finished. Beautiful, detailed, but hollow somehow. I messed it up, he said, without turning. The client wants someone strong, someone captivating. I couldn't deliver, not with her. He turned to me, eyes tired. But you already are all those things. And that's when he said it. The line that shifted something I didn't know was still fragile inside me. Dana, I want to paint you. Really paint you. Not from a photo. From here. From now. I stared at him, stunned. That's where everything began to change. I stood in Caleb's studio doorway, unsure whether to walk in or walk away. My fingers tightened around the edge of my sweater, a nervous habit I hadn't had since college. He looked at me, earnest, vulnerable, nothing like the boy who'd quietly returned home a few months ago. "Paint me?" I repeated, my voice barely louder than a whisper. He nodded slowly. "You're what I've been searching for. The kind of presence that doesn't need noise. It just holds the room." I let out a shaky breath and laughed under it, almost to myself. "I'm your stepmother, Caleb. This is a little unexpected." "I know." His voice was soft but sure. "That's why I asked." He turned away from the canvas and reached behind a garment rack. When he pulled out a dress, a sleek black number that shimmered slightly in the attic light, I nearly stepped back. "This is what I imagined you in. I know it's a lot, but I wanted to show how I see you. Not just as someone who lives in this house, but as a woman who owns every inch of her story." The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I stood frozen, staring at the dress. I had no plan to say yes, but something stirred in me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something I'd buried so deep that even I forgot where I left it. "I'd need some time," I said. Caleb gave me a quiet nod. "Of course, but I need to submit something by Friday. So if you do decide, tomorrow night would be the best window." I left the studio in a daze. That night, I didn't sleep well. I laid next to Mark, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above. His breathing was steady, peaceful. He'd never see what I saw in that attic. He never asked to. But someone had. Caleb had. By the next evening, the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long shadows across the living room. Mark had left for a business dinner in town. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the dress across my lap. I didn't need to ask myself why anymore. I just stood up, pulled the fabric around me, and let it fall into place. Upstairs, the attic studio glowed with soft candlelight. Warm amber lamps filled the corners, and a low instrumental track played through a small Bluetooth speaker. Caleb looked up as I entered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His eyes widened, but not with anything indecent. Just quiet awe. He took a step forward, then caught himself. "You look incredible." The attic wasn't just a workspace anymore. He had rearranged everything. One side held a backdrop draped in deep velvet, the other a single antique chair, polished and inviting. He motioned to it. "Would you sit?" I nodded, heart pounding, and walked slowly to the chair. The dress whispered against my skin as I moved. The air felt heavier now, charged. Caleb sat at his easel and dipped his brush in a rich ochre tone. "Tell me if anything feels uncomfortable," he said. "It already does," I replied with a nervous smile. "But not in a bad way." The first 20 minutes passed in near silence, just the soft swish of brush to canvas, the low hum of cello music, and the occasional clink of his brush-tapping glass. I sat still, spine straight, hands resting on the chair's carved arms. But inside, I was a swirl of emotion. No one had studied me like this in years. And then, somewhere between the first and second break, Caleb spoke again. "You know, I didn't paint you just because I needed someone. I painted you before I even knew why. That photo you posted, I kept looking at it. Not just for how you looked, but for what you didn't say." I felt my throat tighten. "You looked alone, but proud of it. Like the world had underestimated you, and you were done waiting for it to catch up." I didn't know how to answer that, so I didn't. Instead, I looked out the window behind him. The moon had started rising, casting a pale glow over the hills. Downstairs, the house was quiet. And here, in this attic filled with paint, silence, and candlelight, I realized something. I hadn't felt seen in a very long time. The night settled deep around us, and the attic took on a dreamlike stillness. Outside, The wind moved gently through the trees, but inside, there was only the sound of brush against canvas and my own thoughts, louder than ever. Caleb leaned closer to the easel, focused, deliberate. He wasn't just painting. He was searching. Every time his eyes moved from me to the canvas, I could feel it, like he was trying to unlock something I hadn't shown anyone in years. Between each stroke, we spoke in fragments. Nothing too revealing, just enough to keep the quiet from taking over completely. "Did you always want to be an artist?" I asked. He gave a half smile. "Ever since I was old enough to hold a pencil. My mom said I drew on every wall in our apartment." I chuckled softly. "Bet she loved that." He paused. "She didn't, but she kept every drawing." The moment lingered. I could tell her memory still touched him. I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. Some silences are better respected. By the second break, my body started to relax, though my mind was anything but calm. Caleb brought me a glass of wine, nothing fancy, just red and smooth, and placed it in my hand gently, as if afraid to break whatever spell had started forming between us. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm still trying to figure out why I said yes," I said with a faint smile. "I think you already knew," he replied. That answer stayed with me. As I sipped the wine, I studied the studio around me. Every corner told a story, unfinished sketches taped to the wall, stacks of old canvases leaning near the window, open tubes of paint and brushes scattered like forgotten thoughts. And then, during the third intermission, something changed. I had leaned forward slightly to adjust my dress. A strand of hair fell across my face. Caleb stepped toward me, then stopped himself, but only for a second. He reached out, slowly, and tucked the hair behind my ear. His fingertips barely grazed my skin, and yet it felt like lightning. I looked up, startled, but he didn't pull back. His hand lingered just near my jaw, and in his eyes, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Admiration, warmth, respect, but also something more. "Dana," he said quietly, "I don't want to make this uncomfortable for you. I just need you to know, this isn't just art for me. This is real. You've brought something out of me I didn't know was there." I sat frozen. He took a step back, as if realizing he'd gone too far. "Sorry, forget I said that." But I couldn't forget, because I felt it too. That tension, that shift. Something had happened between us that couldn't be undone now. The line was blurring, and we were both standing dangerously close to it. "I'm not sure what this is," I said softly, "but I know it's more than just a painting." Caleb looked at me for a long time. "Would it be okay if I showed you what I've done so far?" I nodded slowly. He turned the easel slightly toward me, revealing the half-finished portrait. I gasped. It wasn't just a likeness. It was me. Completely me. But with more fire, more poise, more soul. The eyes captured something I didn't even know was visible. "This is how I see you," Caleb said. "Not just beautiful, powerful, like someone who's been quiet too long but is ready to take her voice back." My throat caught. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't about age or family ties or what was appropriate. It was about something buried, being awakened. A part of myself I thought was long gone. And as I sat there in silence, dress shimmering in the low light, his eyes on me, I understood. This wasn't just the beginning of a painting. It was the beginning of something else entirely. The room had grown warmer. Or maybe it was just me, the wine, the candlelight. Caleb's eyes lingering too long on mine. It all blurred into a quiet storm I couldn't escape. I sat motionless, watching him work, but my thoughts had already crossed the threshold. I wasn't thinking like a stepmother anymore. I wasn't thinking like a wife. I was thinking like a woman who hadn't been truly seen in years. Caleb paused again, wiping his brush on a cloth. Almost there, he said, though his voice sounded distant, like he wasn't just talking about the painting. Another pause. Then he rose from his stool and approached, kneeling down beside the chair to adjust the hem of the dress that had shifted slightly. His fingers were careful, respectful, but the closeness made my breath catch in my chest. I wanted tonight to be perfect, he murmured. Not just for the art, for you. I looked down at him. He was no longer just a young man figuring out his career. He had presence, intent. His eyes held something I didn't dare name, but I felt it all the same. The third break blurred into something else entirely. He offered to refill my glass and I nodded, though I wasn't sure I needed more wine. I needed clarity. Or maybe I didn't. He returned, handed me the glass, and sat on the floor across from me, just far enough to still be proper, just close enough to challenge that. What's it like? He asked. Being with someone who doesn't see you the way you really are? The question sliced through the air like a blade. I swallowed hard. You don't ask light questions, do you? I don't have time for light, he said quietly. Not anymore. I stared at the rim of my wineglass, turning it in my hands. It's like disappearing slowly. You still function, you smile, you cook dinner. But one day you catch yourself in the mirror and think, she's gone. Caleb leaned forward slightly. She's not gone. She's right here. His voice broke something open in me. I looked up and met his gaze, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I'm not supposed to feel this, I said. Me neither, he whispered. The silence between us pulsed with tension. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that demands to be acknowledged. That moment when everything in your body knows the rules and wants to break them anyway. He reached out slowly, like waiting for me to stop him, but I didn't. His hand touched mine, warm and certain. Dana, he said, barely audible. I've admired you from a distance for so long, not just because of your face, but because of the way you carry pain and beauty at the same time. I felt the lump rise in my throat. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I leaned forward and touched his face. Just once, just gently, my thumb along his cheekbone. His eyes fluttered closed. The air between us crackled. His hand moved to my shoulder, the contact both careful and electrifying. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but I knew there was no going back. The studio, the portrait, the silence. They were all just part of the path that brought us here. And now, we stood on the edge of something neither of us had dared to name. I whispered, Caleb, this can't. I know, he said, but I can't pretend anymore. Then, slowly, his lips brushed against mine, not rushed, not wild, just real, like he'd been waiting for the right moment to breathe. I let it happen. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's wife or someone's placeholder. I felt wanted. Not because I was there, but because I was me. We didn't speak for a long time after that first kiss. The candles flickered. The room held its breath. Caleb stepped back, just slightly, like he was checking if I'd disappear. But I didn't. I stayed. I sat there, in that same antique chair, heart pounding like it hadn't in decades. I should have walked away. I should have said something, anything, to pull us both back to where we belonged. But all I could do was stare at him and feel everything I wasn't supposed to. He took a step forward again, this time slower, more careful. We can stop, he said. We still can. But I already knew we wouldn't. Instead, I stood up. The black silk of the dress slid over my skin like it belonged there, hugging every part of me I'd learned to ignore. I walked toward him, the candlelight throwing soft shadows across the room. Caleb didn't move. He just looked at me, like he always had, like I was someone worth seeing. When I finally stopped in front of him, he raised his hand and let it rest lightly at my waist. It was a simple touch, but it was everything. "I don't want to ruin anything," he said, voice rough with restraint. "You're not," I whispered. He kissed me again, slower this time, the kind of kiss that doesn't ask for permission, it just knows. And in that attic, surrounded by canvases and the quiet hum of music, something inside me broke open. The woman I used to be, the one who laughed too loudly, who dreamed of magazine covers, who once danced barefoot under streetlights, she came back. And she said yes. Yes to being seen, yes to being touched, yes to finally feeling again. We moved toward the couch, the wine forgotten, the painting half finished. Caleb pulled me gently down beside him. His hands moved with purpose but never rushed. His fingers traced along my spine, learning me, remembering me. I let him, because I wanted to be remembered. Each breath, each glance, each soft press of his lips against my skin peeled away the quiet layers of my life. The routine, the years, the silence. It all fell away like dust in the light. And underneath, there I was, alive. When I looked into his eyes, I didn't see a boy. I saw a man who saw me, and that, more than anything, undid me. He whispered my name, again and again, like it was a prayer. Dana. The attic was still. The rest of the world didn't exist. There was no husband downstairs, no history, no lines we were crossing. Only now, only us. As the night stretched on, we stayed close. No words, no plans, just breath and heartbeat. A slow undoing of every wall we'd ever built between us. And when he finally laid his head against my shoulder, both of us wrapped in the warmth of something we hadn't named yet, I looked at the painting resting against the easel. It wasn't finished, but neither were we. The morning light was softer than usual. It crept through the attic windows in pale streaks, brushing over the half-finished painting, the scattered brushes, the empty wine glass on the floor. Caleb was still asleep, curled under the throw blanket on the couch. I sat quietly nearby, wrapped in a silence that felt both terrifying and beautiful. I hadn't closed my eyes all night. I couldn't. The weight of what had happened was pressing gently on my shoulders, like someone whispering, "You'll never be the same again," but without judgment. Just truth. Downstairs, I heard the faint creak of floorboards. Mark. He was awake, making coffee, starting his routine. The routine I had followed for years. But I wasn't in the kitchen this time. I wasn't packing his lunch or asking about meetings or folding laundry before sunrise. I was here, in a space that smelled like turpentine and charcoal, where candlelight had once made me feel 20 years younger, where someone had looked at me like I wasn't just a woman, but a whole universe. I stood slowly, careful not to wake Caleb, and walked to the easel. The painting still stood where he'd left it. Unfinished, yes, but somehow complete in a way that words failed to explain. It was me, but more. My gaze, my tension, my silent defiance, all captured with impossible tenderness. And in that moment, I understood something. This wasn't just a portrait, it was a confession. And maybe mine too. I reached out and traced the edge of the canvas with the tip of my finger. A smile flickered on my lips. Small, fleeting, but real. Behind me, Caleb stirred. I turned. His eyes met mine, still soft from sleep. "Morning," he said. I nodded. "It's beautiful. What you made?" He rubbed his face and sat up slowly. "It's not done." I tilted my head. "Maybe it is." He stood, hesitated, then came toward me. "Dana, what happens now?" I didn't answer at first. The question was too big, and the attic wasn't big enough to hold it. Instead, I walked past him, toward the narrow stairs. Halfway down, I paused and looked back. "You don't have to finish the painting," I said. "You already gave me back something I forgot I had." Then I left. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain. Some things don't need an ending. They just need to mean something while they last. That afternoon, I stood in the bathroom mirror and looked at myself differently. I fixed my hair, put on red lipstick I hadn't worn in years. I didn't do it for Caleb, or Mark, or the world. I did it for me. Because for one night, someone reminded me I was still alive, still whole, still worth painting. And maybe, just maybe, being seen was the first step in becoming real again.